What is up, y'all? Excuse me. It's Marshall Lee of DonkeyJawProjects.com, and it is Monday. And it's lunchtime at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Finally got a chance to do some lunch. This morning I did somewhere around an hour of work on Lone Wolf. Yes, I got Lone Wolf in. Been doing good with that lately. I'm so happy. So basically I did another panel, and yeah, did that and hung out with my wife while I was drawing. And this weekend I was happy to see that I was able to get a decent amount of work done. I wish I could do this at least 8 hours a day, and really knock things out of the park, but it kind of is what it is. Also, I've been thinking a lot today about anthologies still. I talked about that yesterday in the vlog, and I got a response from a lot of people, actually. A lot of people. It's funny because I've talked about all the things we can learn from manga and stuff before. I have at least one video called Can We Fix Comics that came out and was really getting deep into that. And it's funny because I did that, and then like not long after I started seeing other people do similar kind of videos. I've definitely dug deep into that, and a lot of people had some comments talking about those kind of things. I posed the question, yesterday because I was like, it's kind of like, proving a point more than actually asking a question. Like, it's like, why am I so easily addicted to a manga comic, but American comics aren't doing? It's like I kind of know why, but it's just like, it's so true though. Like, why? Like why can't American comics do that? And I'm sure American comics do that. I'm not really disparaging it too much, but like, and they have done. Obviously, American comics is I would say probably the reason why comics ever became. I mean, it's literally something that's pretty unique, I think, or started kind of in America. I mean, I wonder if there's a debate around that, because it's not like there weren't other kind of forms of comics. Like, I know in Japan's history, some of the stuff that was done early in Japanese art could almost be thought of as comics, but it was different and stuff. So anyways, that being said, it was kind of like just trying to say, like, it's so addictive to read these awesome manga comics. I wish it was like that for a lot of the American comics I read. But that being said, it was cool to hear like a lot of people's thoughts and ideas of really why is it, and I got to hear you guys, what you guys think. So that's awesome. And let's see. So I was thinking about anthologies though. To me, it's like kind of both of these are all kind of wrapped up, because I think that's one of the strengths of manga is, it's built off of kind of a judging system where the fans basically dictate what is going to be, in the what stories are going to keep going and stuff. They sort of dictate it, and it's like, basically, if you do well and if your comic gets voted for, it'll continue, or if it's not, then they'll have you wrap up the story in a few more installments. So that anthology idea is like actually really cool, and I was thinking, like, I wonder like if I could do that in my own way, like kind of on a much obviously smaller level. Like, I'm not gonna produce a phone book every week of comics. I wish I could do that, but that's not gonna happen. But I wonder if there could be a way to do it kind of 2 times a year or something. That might be kind of cool. I don't know. That's and the funny thing is I was talking about that, and Clay mentioned, he's like, oh, that would be so awesome if you did, a anthology comic and stuff. And that's Van Illustrations here on YouTube. He's doing 100 Days of Making Comics right now, and he's freaking awesome. You got to check his stuff out. But he mentioned, oh, that would be so cool to see you do that. And then as I read that comment, I'm like, oh, like, what a ding dong. Like, literally, this is like, that was what I was doing. Like, if you guys have been following me for a while, you'll know that, like, I think kind of later on last year, I was talking about, I've been really inspired by Corey Lewis. He's got a comic that's an anthology, and it's all just him doing different crazy stories, and it's called Sun Bakery, and it's on Image Comics. And I don't know if he's going to be doing more. I think he is going to be doing more of that stuff, but I think he did 3 or 4 issues, and then they collected it into one book eventually. But I'm super inspired by that, and I also was a patron of his on Patreon at one point. I'm not a patron of anybody really, I don't think, right now, because I got to a point where I just couldn't afford it. But thank you to all my patrons who are helping me. You're helping me to be able to afford other things, that help me to make my comics. But that being said, that was kind of my whole idea on Patreon, and I was kind of copy and hit the way he does it too, because this is how he had it set up at one point, was that he would offer 1 comic a month for his patrons, and they would get all these cool free comics and stuff. Well, not free, but the money, however much money. And so that's kind of what I did, and it lasted for I don't know, 4 or 5 months, and maybe 5 or 6 months actually, and it was really fun. I enjoyed it, and I was gonna take those comics and I was gonna turn them into an anthology as I went. Every time I got like enough pages for an anthology, I would put it out as a new issue of the anthology. So that was always meant to be kind of an anthology, and it's a cool way to like test out stories to see what people like. And I was like, you know what, I wonder if there's a way that I could do that and also kind of put that like voting system in place. And I also was doing a collaboration with another friend of mine that is not happening anymore, but we were going to do a similar anthology type of project and stuff, but we were going to include other people. And I was thinking, I've always thought of possibly including other people in the anthology too. So the wheels are turning is all I'm saying with the anthology thing. And I think I might still attempt to go back to that now that I've kind of reset how I do things. I don't do 1 comic a month on Patreon anymore. I've realized that that's just too much for me, and it distracts me from doing quality work to a certain degree. I mean, I always try to do my best when I'm working on a comic, but it causes me to rush a little bit more than I'm ready to at the moment, because I'm still learning. I don't know. I feel like I'm too early stage of learning to really churn stuff out quite like that, but I don't know, who knows. Things are always evolving and moving back and forth and adjusting and stuff like that. So anyways, that's just kind of the mixed up thoughts of what I've been thinking about today. Let's get to one anthology story from the Werewolves and Unicorns comic. All right, so here we go. Werewolf and Unicorn in Basket Brawl by Thomas Clemens. Oh man, I've been watching this guy make this comic for a while, and it was nothing but fun. I love seeing the visuals, really talented artist. And I mean, this comic is like a comic book drive-by. Like, you get hit with this thing and you don't know what just happened, and you're just like, that was fun. Like, I don't know, it was pretty awesome. So you guys definitely got to check out this anthology. I mean, look at this thing, it's so much talent. The cover, the comics inside. I mean, you only got 3 days left technically. We got 2 more days, 2 more stories to review, and you know, that's gonna be it. So you guys better jump on this. And this poster, man, oh my gosh, I'm probably gonna show a visual of the new poster soon, if not tomorrow. I think, I don't know, we'll see. I don't know if I have access to it, so we'll see. But you guys gotta check this out. Please go support. You know, we only got, like I said, 3 days, and we want to get to the poster, and we'd like to push a little bit further. And you know, usually you do get a bump in the last couple days, but we're not seeing it yet. So come help support and share the love. All right, so I got a question about how do I come up with a villain. You know, I have a hero and somebody who I've been wanting to make a story about, but how do I come up with a villain for my comic? And I thought that was a pretty cool question, and it's one that I feel like I'll want to return to in the future when I've got more experience with creating really awesome villains, because I feel like I haven't even come close to hitting my villain creation potential. Although I did create Tusk from the Glyph comic, and as simple as he is, you know, he's kind of like a kind of a Godfather type, a gang leader type, and so he's kind of easy. You know, he kind of goes along a typical archetype, but you know, people seem to really like Tusk and want to see a comic with him, which they will. when I do the Glyph story that Fway is currently writing. Fway Storm. Check out his channel, he's awesome. It's spelled F-W-A-H, Storm, like, you know, any kind of storm. Thunderstorm, you know. Check his stuff out, he's awesome. And he's on YouTube, if I wasn't obvious. So as far as like creating a villain, you know, there's a lot of different things to think about. One thing is you definitely want to spend a lot of, you know, good time. Like whatever time you would spend developing your protagonist, you want to probably spend that same kind of quality time on your villain. One thing I know that's a tip about villains is you need to make, you know, I'm thinking specifically of like superhero type of stories, but obviously, you know, there's all kinds of different ways to think about it. I mean, an antagonist in a story doesn't have to be like a supervillain. It can literally be your own negative thoughts. You know, it could be just a circumstance that's stopping you from getting to the goal, like an antagonist, or it could be like you know, a cranky mother or something. Like it could be like literally anything. But you know, if we're thinking, you know, and I think thinking about superhero stories is a great way to think about villains, though, because it just makes that archetype clear. It just makes the whole concept like really obvious, and you can kind of build off of that. So anyways, one thing about villains is you want to make your villain as powerful, as formidable as your protagonist, or more. And it's actually kind of cool if you make them even more powerful, because then it's like, well, how am I going to get my protagonist out of this, you know, my hero, how am I going to get him out of this predicament? But you know, you can, if you just have, you know, a villain who is like kind of around the same level, you know, you can kind of add circumstance to the mix and add, you know, maybe complications to the mix to make the problem still very overwhelming for a protagonist to overcome. When it comes down to it, the thing that the protagonist really needs to overcome is they need to come to a change, some kind of transformation, usually mentally / emotionally, that will help them to go forward with more, whatever it is they need to overcome, whether it be like a new realization or, you know, a stronger willpower or whatever. There's a lot of different stories. I mean, that's basically the crux of what story is. And it's funny, I'm talking about the protagonist a lot when we're talking about the villain, but that's a key right there. When you're writing a villain, I mean, the whole point to write a villain is to tell the story of the protagonist. So, I mean, sometimes a villain type character can be the protagonist to the point where it ends up being like a tragedy and it's like a negative character arc and stuff like that. That's kind of the prequels. Star Wars prequels is kind of that story, but there's a lot of stories weaved into there. But anyways, that being said, we're talking about developing a villain, and I'm talking about the hero, Well, that's the thing, is you're trying to tell the story of the hero, generally. And so every single character in that storyline, and every single circumstance, every single thing about the environment, all is meant to play a part to tell that protagonist's story. It's all in service of the journey that the hero is going through. So, everything is related to the hero in some way, shape, or form. So a villain should contrast, or also, you want to make the villain contrast in some way, obviously. But one thing is like, a lot of times you'll have a villain and a hero actually have the same goal to a certain extent, but they're framed differently. And I've talked about this before, but like the easiest version of this is like Professor X and Magneto, and how they both are trying to like bring help to mutants who are being taken advantage of, or who are being marginalized, or whatever it is. I mean, it's kind of a metaphor of racism in America. So it's like, but they both want to go about it, but one is thinking, Magneto's thinking, well, mutants are the superior race, and they should, not only should they get a fair shake, but they should be like, they should be kind of in charge of the whole situation. They should be the ones on top. Whereas Professor X is, we should all be treated equally, and we should all get a fair shake, and mutants need to be treated the same as regular humans, but we should find a way to live peaceably together. So there's two different takes, and so, but it's almost like the same goal, but there's just two different situations. So that's how you can kind of, one way that's fun to kind of contrast and create your villain. And again, like I said, I'll revisit this, but there's like a lot of other, possible ways you can have your villain, kind of trying to get the same goal, like meaning like, kind of like Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is, trying to get, ancient artifacts for, to have as like something that can be preserved and studied and put into a museum and things like that. He's trying to preserve history, and while his enemies are trying to get those same artifacts, but they're trying to get it for financial gain, or power, or something like that. So they have different motives, but they have the same object they're trying to get. And in this one, it's a little bit different than the first one, because it's surrounded around an object. It's not surrounded around like an ideology. You know what I mean? So it's just a little bit of a different take on it. There could also be a relationship type of situation, like, the hero, when he was growing up, did something that caused something really bad to happen to the antagonist, or the villain, and he didn't probably mean it, or maybe he has learned since then not to be that way. Maybe that was the thing that taught him not to be whatever way he was being, and he's grown and become a better person. But the villain took that to such an extreme level where he's thinking, he or she is thinking, that they want to get like revenge or something like that. So the villain would have a revenge motivation. Now, these are ways to kind of, you just kind of, I noticed that creating characters in general in stories, this is what I'm realizing is kind of a shortcut, is you just start to work on the relationships between the different characters. So right now I'm developing like a cast of characters. Actually, I'm developing the villain too for Big Wrath, for the Peter Palmiotti collaboration we're doing. And a lot of time I kind of started figuring out what the personalities of each one of them are by thinking about, well, this person has this relationship with this character. Okay, well, how does this person feel about another character that's in it? And how does they feel about another character? And they all feel a certain way about each character. So, there's different things that have happened in the past that cause them to think that. And you're looking at like backstory and stuff like that. So a great way to kind of start trying to figure out what your villain is to kind of figure out some of these relationships. Also, another way to kind of troubleshoot what your villain is going to be is if you have a good idea of what your hero's main goal is, and his motive, or his or her motive or goal is, then you can kind of work off of that. Well, come up with 5 ideas of different types of villain characters that would have some kind of motivation to stop your character from getting to that goal. Or maybe your hero stands for something. Think about 5 different types of villains that might hate what that character stands for and try to stop him in every possible way. Or it could be vice versa. Maybe that's a good way to develop a hero. Even like just come up with this crazy horrible villain and what they stand for, and think of like 5 different possible heroes that would be motivated to stop that villainous person or creature from doing what they're doing. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of troubleshoot this. It's always great to, like, whenever you're figuring out a certain thing in a story, is look at the opposite thing, or look at things that are other parts of the story, and see if you can kind of reverse engineer your way back to where you're trying to get to. A lot of cool different things like that. And also, one last thing on like actually designing the physical attributes of your character. There's a couple different things. One is, a lot of times people use like angular shapes and like triangles, and they use dark colors, they use black, they use purples, things like that. Sometimes they do that kind of thing to design their character. But there's also kind of this other idea of something that's even more creepy and more sinister sometimes, is when you create an unlikely character to be the villain. So, one of the best examples of that is it Professor Umbridge? Is that the right name? The kind of older lady who comes in to kind of take over the school in Hogwarts and Harry Potter. And she kind of seems on the outside like she puts up this front of being like this sweet old lady who loves kittens and wears pink, but she's really a horrible person, and she's like one of the most hated, I'd say she's one of the most hated villains in Harry Potter. So there's that. Or there's also, like, your villain doesn't have to be ugly or anything. Your villain could be beautiful, and there's this thing in the Bible that I always think of when I think of this concept, which is that Satan comes as an angel of light to deceive people and stuff like that. So, you might think of like the worst being in the world coming as something beautiful and promising you good things, and promising you, and you make it like kind of surface things, like they promise you wealth and they promise you power and things like that. It sounds really good, like when when the devil tempted Jesus in the wilderness, he was trying to promise him like all this power, and you could be in control of this and blah blah blah. Like, they promise you things that, but you know that their promises come with strings attached, and it kind of gives you almost a sick feeling. But you know, if you believe it, you're like, oh, okay, you know, this is the good thing, and you don't realize that it's actually the bad thing. So that's another thing to think about with villains. So I surprisingly had a lot of thoughts on this, I guess, because we're going into 14 minutes on my little dialogue here, so which is going to make for a long video. So I don't know, hopefully that's helpful, guys. And I don't know, I think that was a fun discussion. Villains are the coolest. Like, I hope I'm able to like create some crazy villains that, you know, I want to create villains that people hate, or people love to hate, you know, that whole idea, because they're just fun, and they're fun. And when you really create a villain that really is effective and that people love to hate, it's so much sweeter when the hero wins in the end, you know what I mean? So really cool stuff. Thanks for the question to the person who asked that question. And other than that, you guys rock, and I will talk to you on the next vlog. Peace out.